The Grand Concord Station hung in the black emptiness of space, like a city made of glass and light. It was the biggest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. Hundreds of alien races came here to talk, to argue, to make deals, and sometimes to threaten each other with war. It was a place of power, and every species that walked its halls wanted more of it. Humanity had arrived here only 8 years ago. In the eyes of the galaxy, they were babies. New, small, unimportant. Most alien species looked at humans the way a grown adult looks at a child trying to sit at the dinner table with the elders. Some were kind about it. Most were not. Sergeant Ethan Cole stood near the back wall of the grand reception hall and tried not to yawn. He was a big man, wide in the shoulders and thick in the arms, with a face that looked like it had been through a few rough nights and come out smiling anyway. He was 34 years old, a former combat medic who had served in 3 conflicts back on Earth before being reassigned to diplomatic security. His job was simple. Stand near Ambassador Lin Zhao. Look tough. Make sure nobody stabbed her. He was not very good at the look tough part. He kept smiling at aliens who walked past, which seemed to confuse most of them. The reception hall was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top, lit from within by floating orbs of soft blue light. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the room. Some were tall and thin like walking trees. Some were short and round and covered in fur. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Ethan had stopped being surprised by alien bodies a long time ago. What still surprised him was how similar they all were on the inside. Proud, scared, hungry for respect. Ambassador Lin Zhao moved through the crowd like a fish through water. She was a small woman, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had spent 20 years in Earth's diplomatic service, and another 5 learning the politics of the galaxy. She was good at her job. Tonight, her job was to convince enough alien delegates to support humanity's request for a seat on the Galactic Accord Council. A seat at that table meant protection, trade rights, and a voice in decisions that affected every living being in the galaxy. Without it, humanity was just a small species on a small planet, hoping nobody decided to step on them. Things were going well until the Draelith arrived. The crowd parted like water before a stone. The Draelith were impossible to ignore. They stood over 7 feet tall, with silver skin that caught the light like polished metal. Each one had 4 arms, thick with muscle, and eyes that glowed a faint amber color. They moved with the kind of grace that only came from a lifetime of combat training. Every Draelith was a warrior. It was not a career choice. It was their entire identity. At the front of the group walked Princess Kalith Vortanis. She was the heir to the Draelith Dominion, one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. She was tall, even by Draelith standards, and she carried herself like a blade that had never known a sheath. Her silver skin was marked with thin golden lines, battle honors earned in real combat. Her 4 arms were bare, showing the lean muscle beneath. Her amber eyes swept the room with a look that said she had already judged everyone in it and found them all lacking. Ethan watched her from across the hall. He did not think she was terrifying, although he knew he probably should. He thought she looked tired. There was something behind those glowing eyes that he recognized. He had seen it in soldiers who had been fighting too long. A deep, bone-level exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix. The trouble started quickly. Ambassador Zhao approached the Draelith delegation to make polite conversation. It was a standard diplomatic move. Smile, bow slightly, say something nice about their empire. Hope they did not spit on you. Kalith looked down at Zhao the way a mountain looks down at a pebble. You are the human ambassador, Kalith said. Her voice was deep and smooth and carried easily across the hall. Conversations nearby went quiet. People turned to watch. "I am," Zhao said with a calm smile. "It is an honor to meet the heir to the Dralith Dominion." "You seek a seat on the council," Kalith said. It was not a question. "We do." Kalith let out a small sound that might have been a laugh. "Your species is barely out of its cradle. You have no fleet worth mentioning. No warrior tradition. No conquests. You are soft, Ambassador. Your people bruise when they fall. They break when they are struck. They die from things that would not scratch a Dralith child." She paused and looked around the room, making sure everyone was listening. They were. Why should the galaxy give a seat of power to a species that cannot even defend itself? The hall was silent. Zhao's smile did not waver, but Ethan could see the tension in her jaw. This was bad. Kalith was not just insulting humanity. She was doing it publicly, in front of every major species in the galaxy. If no one answered, if humanity just stood there and took it, the message would be clear. Humans were weak. Humans did not belong. Kalith seemed to enjoy the silence. She straightened to her full height, and spoke again, louder this time. "I invoke the right of Kethalar. Let any human here step forward and face me in formal combat. Prove that your species has the strength to stand among us, or accept your place beneath us." The room buzzed with shocked whispers. The right of Kethalar was sacred to the Dralith. It was a challenge of dominance, a duel that could only end when one fighter submitted, was knocked unconscious, or was killed. No one refused it without losing all respect. Zhao's face went pale. She turned slightly and caught Ethan's eye. Her look said everything. We cannot refuse, but we cannot win either. Ethan looked at the princess. He looked at her golden battle marks, and her 4 powerful arms, and her eyes that burned like dying stars. He thought about Earth. He thought about every time his species had been told it was too small, too weak, too young to matter. He thought about what happened every time someone underestimated a human being. He stepped forward. The crowd gasped. She studied him from head to toe, and her expression shifted into something between amusement and pity. "You?" she said. "Me," Ethan said. He gave her his best friendly smile. "I accept your challenge, Your Highness." Kalith stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to her delegation and said something in her own language that made them all bare their teeth in sharp grins. "Tomorrow," she said to Ethan, "the Crucible. Try not to die before then." She walked away. The crowd erupted into noise. Ambassador Zhao grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him aside. "What are you doing?" she hissed. Ethan watched Kalith's silver form disappear through the far doors. He had seen the look in her eyes when she issued the challenge. It was not pride. It was not cruelty. It was desperation. She was performing, playing a role she had been given before she was old enough to choose it. "I have been in worse spots," he said. "She has 4 arms and plasma blades, Ethan." "Yeah," he said, still smiling. "But I have got something better." "What?" He did not answer. He just looked at the doors where the princess had gone, and thought about the tiredness he had seen behind her golden eyes. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. The Crucible was an arena built inside the station itself. It was a wide circle of polished black stone, surrounded by rising rows of seats that could hold 10,000 spectators. Floating holographic screens carried the image to every corner of the Grand Concord Station and beyond. Somewhere out there, on 100 different worlds, billions of beings were watching. Ethan stood in the preparation room beneath the arena floor. It was a cold gray space with stone walls and a single door that led up to the fighting ground. He was wearing his standard-issue uniform. No armor, no helmet. He stretched his arms above his head and rolled his neck from side to side. Ambassador Zhao stood in front of him with her arms crossed and a look on her face that could have melted steel. Tell me you have a plan, she said. I have a plan, Ethan said. A real plan. Not a feeling, not a hunch. A plan. His eyes were calm and steady, the way they always got before something dangerous. Lynn, I spent 12 years as a combat medic. I have held people together with my bare hands while the world exploded around me. I have talked soldiers out of doing terrible things with nothing but my voice. I know what I am doing. She will kill you. She might, he agreed, but I do not think she wants to. Before Zhao could respond, a deep horn sounded from above. The arena was ready. Ethan gave her a wink, which made her even angrier, and walked through the door. He climbed the stairs and stepped into the light. The noise hit him like a wave. 10,000 aliens were packed into the seats around the arena, and their voices blended into a roar that vibrated in his chest. The holographic screen showed his face from every angle. He could feel a billion eyes on him. He was one man in the middle of the biggest stage in the galaxy. He looked across the arena, and there she was. Princess Calith Vortanis stood at the opposite end of the crucible. She wore ceremonial war armor, silver plates that fit her body like a second skin. In her 4 hands, she held 4 weapons. 2 plasma-edged swords that hummed with blue energy. A curved dagger, a short spear. She looked like something out of a nightmare, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Ethan had nothing. No weapons, no armor, just his uniform and his boots. The crowd noticed. The roaring turned into confused murmurs. A Draelith elder, ancient and bent with age, stood at the edge of the arena and raised his hand for silence. The right of Kethalar is invoked, the elder said in a voice that carried like thunder. The challenge stands between Princess Calith Vortanis of the Draelith Dominion and Sergeant Ethan Cole of Earth. The right ends when one combatant submits, is made unable to fight, or is killed. There are no other rules. The elder lowered his hand. Begin. Calith moved first. She crossed the distance between them with terrifying speed, her 4 arms working in perfect coordination. Her sword swung in wide arcs, the plasma edges leaving trails of blue light in the air. It was a killing pattern, a move designed to end a fight in seconds. Ethan stepped sideways. The blades cut through empty air. Calith spun, adjusted, and struck again. 3 attacks in rapid succession, each from a different angle. Her spear thrust at his chest, while her swords came in from both sides, and her dagger swept low at his legs. Ethan moved like water. He stepped, ducked, and turned with a smoothness that did not look like fighting. It looked like dancing. His body flowed around her attacks, missing each blade by inches. He never struck back. He just moved. The crowd went silent. Calith attacked again and again. She was fast, impossibly fast, and every strike was meant to end the fight. But Ethan was not where her weapons expected him to be. He read her body like a book. Every twitch of her shoulder told him where the next blade was going. Every shift of her weight warned him a half-second before the blow came. 12 years of studying human bodies, of learning to see pain and tension and intention in the smallest movements, had given him a skill that no warrior in the galaxy expected. He did not fight her attacks. He simply was not there when they arrived. A minute passed, then 2. Calith's breathing grew heavier. Her amber eyes burned with frustration. She had never fought someone who refused to fight back. It broke every pattern she had ever learned. "Fight me," she snarled. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "No," Ethan said. His voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. She screamed and launched a flurry of strikes so fast that the holographic screens could barely track them. One of her swords caught his left arm, slicing through his sleeve and drawing a line of bright red blood. The crowd gasped. Ethan did not flinch. He did not even look at the wound. That must feel lonely, he said quietly, still moving, still dodging, being the strongest person in the room, always. Kalith faltered. Her rhythm broke for just a heartbeat. What? I can see it, Ethan said. He was closer now, moving toward her even as she tried to push him back. In your eyes, behind all that anger. You are exhausted, Kalith. How long have you been carrying this? How long have you been fighting to prove something to people who will never tell you it is enough? Her next strike was slow, not physically slow, but emotionally slow, as if her body was still fighting, but her heart had started to hesitate. Ethan saw the opening. Not a gap in her defense, but a gap in her armor. The real armor, the one she wore on the inside. He stepped forward, inside the reach of all four of her arms, and he wrapped his arms around her. He hugged her. The arena went completely still. 10,000 spectators held their breath. 1 billion viewers across the galaxy stared at their screens. A human man, bleeding from a wound on his arm, stood in the middle of a sacred dueling arena, with his arms wrapped around a warrior princess who held 4 weapons that could kill him in an instant. Kalith froze. Her entire body went rigid. Her swords hovered inches from his back. Her dagger pressed lightly against his ribs. Her spear trembled beside his neck. One twitch of any hand, and he would die. He held her firmly, warmly, the way you hold someone who has been standing alone in the cold for too long. You do not have to keep proving you are strong, he whispered. Only she could hear him. I can feel it, Kalith. You are so tired. It is okay to put the swords down. Something broke inside her. She did not know what it was. She had never felt it before. It was like a wall that she had spent her entire life building suddenly developed a crack, and through that crack came something warm and strange and terrifying. Her arms shook. Her blades trembled. Slowly, one by one, her 4 hands opened. The weapons clattered to the stone floor. Her arms hung at her sides. She did not hug him back. She did not know how. But she stopped fighting. For 5 long seconds, nobody moved. Then the Drelith Elder, at the edge of the arena, made a sound that nobody had heard in over 1,000 years. It was a low, keening note, almost like singing. The sound filled the arena like a wave. Kalith's eyes went wide. She knew what that sound meant. She had read about it in the oldest texts of her people. Stories so ancient they were almost myths. Kethvor, the yielding of wills. The rarest outcome of the rite of Kethalar. It happened when neither combatant conquered the other through force, and one instead offered complete and open vulnerability. In Drelith philosophy, to show your unguarded self to an enemy was the ultimate act of power, because it required mastery not of another, but of yourself. It was considered sacred, holy, and by the ancient laws that no Drelith could ignore, it created an unbreakable bond between the 2 fighters, a betrothal bond. The Elder's voice rang through the silent arena. Kethvor has been witnessed. The bond is sealed. By the ancient law, Kalith Vortanis and Ethan Cole are betrothed. Kalith, still standing in Ethan's arms, looked up at him with an expression that mixed shock, confusion, and something she could not name. Ethan blinked. He looked at the elders. He looked at Kalith. He looked at the 10,000 spectators staring at him in stunned silence. I am sorry, he said slowly. I am what now? Somewhere in the crowd, Ambassador Zhao put her face in her hands. Across the galaxy, 1 billion beings watched a human soldier standing in a sacred arena, arms still wrapped around an alien princess, looking completely and utterly confused. Nobody knew it yet, but the galaxy had just changed forever. The next 3 days were chaos. Every news channel in the galaxy played the footage on repeat. The human who walked into a sacred duel with no weapons. The hug. The weapons falling to the floor. The ancient song of the elders. It was the most watched moment in galactic history. Opinion was split right down the middle. Half the galaxy thought it was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. The other half thought it was an insult to everything the Drelith stood for. Ethan sat in his small quarters aboard the station and stared at the wall. His arm was bandaged where Calith's sword had cut him. It was not a bad wound. He had stitched worse on the battlefield back on Earth. But the wound to his conscience was harder to treat. He had not meant to do this. He had walked into that arena with a simple plan. Show the galaxy that humans were not weak. Show them that strength did not have to mean violence. Maybe make the princess think twice about dismissing his people. That was all. He did not plan to accidentally marry her. Ambassador Zhao was handling the political side with her usual sharpness. She came to his quarters on the second day, sat across from him, and spoke in the tone she used when she was being very careful with her words. The betrothal bond is legally recognized by every species in the Galactic Accord, she said. The Drelith conducted the rite under official witness. It cannot be ignored. There has to be a way to undo it, Ethan said. There is. Both parties must publicly declare the bond without honor, an annulment. Then let us do that. Zhao shook her head slowly. If Caliph declares the bond without honor, she admits that the Kethvor was false, that she was not truly yielded. In Drelith culture, that means she was simply defeated in the arena and failed to submit properly. She would be seen as a coward who could not even lose with dignity. Her claim to the throne would be over. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. So I trapped her. You did not mean to. That does not matter. The result is the same. He ran his hands through his hair. I went in there to help, and I made everything worse. Zhao looked at him with an expression that was almost sympathetic. Almost. There is another way to look at this, Ethan. Humanity is now linked by blood bond to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Our request for a council seat just became 10 times stronger. Other species are suddenly very interested in talking to us. The Drelith cannot openly move against humanity without moving against their own princess. You want me to use her. I want you to understand the situation. Ethan met her eyes. I will not use her, Lin. Find another way. Zhao left without another word, but Ethan could tell she was not done thinking about it. On the third day, a message arrived at his door. It was delivered by a young Drelith soldier who looked at Ethan like he was a puzzle that did not have enough pieces. The message was written in the formal Drelith script, but someone had added a rough translation in human English beneath it. It read simply, "The princess requests your presence for the evening meal. Attendance is not optional." Ethan put on a clean shirt and went. Calith's quarters were on the opposite side of the station, in a section reserved for the Drelith delegation. The rooms were large and sparse, decorated in the Drelith style with dark metals and sharp geometric patterns. There was no softness anywhere, no cushions, no curtains, even the chairs looked uncomfortable. Calith stood by a wide window that looked out at the stars. She had changed out of her armor, and wore a simple gray robe that made her look less like a warrior and more like a person. Her forearms were crossed, 2 over her chest and 2 behind her back. She did not turn around when Ethan entered. "Sit," she said. He sat. The chair was, as expected, very uncomfortable. They ate in silence. The food was Drelith, which meant it was mostly raw protein and some kind of bitter root vegetable. Ethan ate it without complaint. He had eaten worse things in worse places. After a long time, Calith finally spoke. "Why?" Ethan looked up from his plate. "Why what?" "Why did you embrace me?" She still had not turned from the window. Her voice was controlled, but there was something underneath it. Something fragile. "In the arena, you could have fought. You could have tried to strike me when my guard was open. You could have dodged until I was too tired to continue, and then forced a submission. Any of those things would have been understandable. Instead, you held me like a child, in front of the entire galaxy." She paused. "Why?" Ethan put down his eating tool, which was a kind of sharp metal stick that the Drelith used instead of forks. He thought carefully before answering. "Because you looked like you needed it," he said. Caliph turned. Her amber eyes were bright and hard. "That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have." He leaned back in the terrible chair and looked at her. "Where I come from, we have a saying. The strongest people are usually the loneliest, because everyone assumes they do not need help. I looked at you in that arena, and I did not see an enemy. I saw someone who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time, and had never been allowed to put it down." She stared at him. Her four hands opened and closed at her sides. "You know nothing about me. I know you have been fighting your whole life. I know your people measure worth by how much pain you can give and take. I know that you challenged humanity, not because you hate us, but because someone told you that you had to. I know that when I held you, you did not kill me. And you could have, very easily." He held her gaze. "That tells me everything I need to know." Caliph was silent for a long time. Then she sat down across from him, and for the first time, her posture was not that of a princess. It was that of a person who was very, very tired. "I did not ask for this bond," she said quietly. "Neither did I, and I am sorry." "Sorry," she said the word like she was tasting it. "Drelith do not apologize. It implies weakness. Humans apologize all the time. It implies that we care about the people we have affected." She looked at him with an expression he could not read. Then she pushed a cup of something hot across the table toward him. He took it and sipped. It was strong and bitter and burned going down. "What is this?" he asked, trying not to cough. "Drelith fire tea. It is traditional after a bonding. It is trying to kill me." Something happened then that Ethan suspected had not happened in a very long time. The corner of Caliph's mouth twitched. It was not a smile. A smile would have been too much. But it was the ghost of one, the shadow of something that might grow into a smile if given enough time and enough terrible tea. They sat together as the stars turned slowly outside the window. He told her about Earth, about oceans and forests, and cities full of people who argued about everything, but came together when it mattered. She told him about the Dominion, about training arenas and battle songs, and a childhood spent learning 100 ways to end a life before learning a single way to preserve one. It was not friendship. It was two people sitting in the same room and choosing not to leave. 3 hours later, Ethan walked back to his quarters through the quiet station corridors. He was thinking about her eyes. Not the glow, not the power in them, but the way they had softened when he talked about Earth's oceans. She had never seen an ocean, a princess of an empire that spanned star systems, and she had never seen a body of water bigger than a Drelith bath pool. He was so lost in thought that he almost did not hear the footstep behind him. Almost. He turned just in time to see a shadow lunging at him with a curved blade. Instinct kicked in, and he twisted sideways, but the blade caught the edge of his shoulder, and pain exploded through his body. He hit the wall, slid down, and looked up at the assassin standing over him. The assassin raised the blade for a killing strike. A silver blur came from nowhere. 4 arms moved faster than Ethan's eyes could follow. There was a wet, heavy sound, and then the assassin was on the floor, and Caliph was standing over the body, breathing hard. 2 of her hands were slick with dark blood. Her amber eyes burned with a fury that made the air feel hot. She looked down at Ethan. Then she looked at the dead assassin, then back at Ethan. "You are bleeding," she said. "You followed me." Attendance was not optional. She knelt beside him and pressed 2 of her hands against his shoulder wound. Her touch was surprisingly gentle for someone who had just killed a person in under 2 seconds. "I will not let them hurt you. Do you understand? Whatever this bond is, whatever it means, you are mine to protect now." Ethan looked up at her. Her face was close. Her eyes were fierce, and frightened, and certain, all at the same time. "Okay," he said. She helped him stand. In the distance, alarm sirens began to wail. Something had changed between them. Neither of them had the words for it yet, but they both felt it. A crack in the wall had become a door, and the door was open. The assassin was Drelith. That was the first thing the station security confirmed. The second thing they confirmed was worse. The assassin had carried a mark on his wrist, a burned symbol in the shape of a broken blade. It was the sign of Lord Veyrak Vortanis, Kalith's uncle, and the commander of the Dominion's Second Fleet. Kalith stood in the security office and stared at the holographic image of the mark. Her face showed nothing, but Ethan, who was sitting nearby with fresh bandages on his shoulder, had learned to read her silences. This one was heavy with old pain. "Your uncle," Ambassador Zhao said carefully. She was standing by the door with a data tablet in her hands. "You do not seem surprised." "I am not," Kalith said. Her voice was flat. "Veyrak has wanted the throne since before I was born. He believes the royal bloodline must remain pure, strong, undiluted." She looked at Ethan. "A bond with a human is everything he has been waiting for. An excuse to call me unfit, to take what he has always wanted." The news came fast after that. Within 2 days, Lord Veyrak had called an emergency session of the Drelith Council of Blades. This was the ruling body of the Dominion, made up of the most powerful military leaders in the Empire. Veyrak stood before them and made his case with the passion of a man who had been rehearsing this speech for years. The betrothal was a disgrace, he said. The HFY was a myth, a fairy tale from a softer age, and it should not bind the future of the Dominion to a species of fragile, short-lived creatures who could not even survive a mild winter on a Drelith colony world. The princess had been corrupted, he said. She had shown weakness in the arena by dropping her blades. She had failed the most basic test of Drelith's strength. His ultimatum was simple and cruel. Either Kalith killed the human herself, in public, to prove her loyalty to the Dominion and its values, or she would be stripped of her title, exiled from the Empire, and declared without honor. If she was exiled, the line of succession would pass to Veyrak, and Veyrak made it very clear what he would do with that power. He would bring the full strength of the Drelith fleet to bear on humanity. He would make an example of the species that had dared to touch his niece. He would burn their little blue planet to glass. The Council of Blades gave Kalith 7 days to decide. Ethan found out about the ultimatum from Zhao, who told him with the careful, measured voice she used when she was trying very hard not to panic. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. 7 days, he said. 7 days, she said. He nodded slowly and stood up. Where is she? Kalith was in her quarters, and she was breaking things. When Ethan arrived, the room looked like a storm had passed through it. Furniture was overturned. Deep gashes marked the walls, where blades had been driven into the metal. Kalith stood in the middle of it all, with her 4 fists clenched and her chest heaving. Go away, she said without looking at him. He did not go away. He stepped over a broken chair and sat down on the floor, because the floor was the only thing left that was not destroyed. I know about the ultimatum, he said. Her jaw tightened. Then you know what I must do. You do not have to do anything. She turned on him. Her eyes were wild. You do not understand. If I refuse, Veyrak takes the throne. If Veyrak takes the throne, he attacks Earth. Millions of your people will die because of me. Because I dropped my swords in a stupid arena, because a stupid human held me and said something kind, and I was too weak to stop myself from listening. Her voice broke on the last word. Ethan sat very still and looked up at her. Then he said the thing that he had been thinking since Zhao told him about the ultimatum. Then kill me. The room went silent. Kalith stared at him. I mean it, he said. His voice was steady and calm. If my death keeps your people from attacking mine, then it is a fair trade. I am one man. Earth has 8 billion people. The math is easy. Caliph made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a scream. You are insane. All of your species is insane. Why do you keep offering yourself? Why do you keep giving when the galaxy only knows how to take? Because that is what humans do, Ethan said simply. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We do not have 4 arms or silver skin or plasma swords. But we will walk into fire for the people we care about. Every single time. It is the one thing we are really good at. Caliph sank to the floor across from him. All 4 of her arms hung limp at her sides. She looked smaller than he had ever seen her. I will not kill you, she said. I cannot. Then we need a different plan. The plan came together over the next 2 days, built in quiet rooms between Ethan, Caliph, and Ambassador Zhao, who turned out to be exactly as brilliant as Ethan had always suspected. There was an ancient provision in the Galactic Accord called the right of joint petition. When 2 individuals from different species were bonded by any legally recognized method, they could demand a formal hearing before the full Galactic Council to argue for the legitimacy of their union. If the Council voted in their favor, the bond became protected under galactic law. No single species, not even the Dralith, could override it without declaring war on the entire Accord. It was their only way out, but they had to reach the Council chambers alive. On the morning of the 5th day, Veyrak's forces moved. He had smuggled 30 Dralith soldiers onto the station, hidden among cargo shipments and maintenance crews. They sealed off the corridors between the Dralith quarters and the Council chambers. Their orders were clear. The human does not reach the Council alive. Ethan and Caliph stood together at the end of a long hallway. Behind them, Ambassador Zhao worked furiously on a communication terminal, broadcasting an emergency petition to every council member on the station. Ahead of them, 10 Dralith soldiers in full combat armor blocked the way. Caliph drew her swords, all 4 of them. Ethan picked up a metal rod from a broken railing. It was not much, but it was better than nothing. Caliph looked at him. Stay behind me. Not a chance. She made that almost smile again. The ghost of something warm. Stubborn species. The stubbornest. They moved together. Caliph fought like a force of nature. She was faster than any of Veyrak's soldiers and twice as skilled. Her 4 arms worked in perfect coordination, each blade finding its target with deadly precision. She carved a path through the corridor like a silver storm. Ethan fought differently. He did not try to kill. He used the metal rod to deflect and redirect, knocking weapons aside and sending soldiers stumbling off balance. When one soldier lunged at him, he sidestepped, grabbed the soldier's arm and used the man's own momentum to throw him into the wall. When another came from behind, he dropped low and swept the soldier's legs out from under him. It was not elegant. It was not pretty, but it was effective. They moved through the station like 2 halves of the same machine. Where Caliph was a blade, Ethan was a shield. Where she destroyed, he redirected. They covered each other without speaking, without planning, as if some deep instinct told each of them exactly where the other needed them to be. The station's security feeds caught everything. Across the galaxy, people watched a warrior princess and a human soldier fighting side by side through corridors lit by emergency lights. They watched a woman with 4 arms and a man with 2, different in every possible way, moving together as if they had been doing it their whole lives. They reached the doors of the council chambers with blood on their clothes and fire in their eyes. Caliph had taken a deep cut across her shoulder. Ethan had bruises on every part of his body that had bruises to give. They were breathing hard and leaning on each other slightly, and neither of them let go. Zhao's broadcast had worked. The council members were inside. waiting. And outside the chamber doors, blocking Veyrak's remaining soldiers, stood security forces from 6 different alien species. They had not been ordered to help. They had chosen to. A tall, thin alien from a species Ethan did not recognize stood at the front of the guards. It looked at Ethan with its 3 dark eyes and spoke in careful English. "We saw the duel," it said. "We saw the corridor. We will hold this door." Ethan nodded. His throat was too tight to speak. He looked at Kalith. She looked at him. Her silver skin was streaked with blood, and her amber eyes were burning. But underneath the fire, he saw something he had never seen there before. Hope. "Ready?" he asked. She took one of his hands in one of hers. Ready. They walked into the council chambers together. The Grand Council Chamber was the heart of the Galactic Accord. It was a massive circular room with a domed ceiling made of transparent crystal, so the stars themselves looked down on the proceedings. Seats rose in tiers around a central floor, each section assigned to a different species. Hundreds of delegates filled those seats, and every one of them was staring at the 2 battered figures who had just walked through the doors. Ethan and Kalith stood in the center of the chamber. They were bruised and cut and exhausted. Blood stained their clothes. Kalith still held one of Ethan's hands in one of hers, and neither of them seemed to notice or care. On the far side of the chamber, Lord Veyrak stood with his own delegation. He was taller than Kalith and broader, with deep scars on his silver skin and eyes that held nothing but cold ambition. He looked at his niece with open disgust. The council speaker, an ancient being from a species that resembled a great tortoise, raised a heavy hand for silence. The room obeyed. "The right of joint petition has been invoked," the speaker said in a slow, deep voice. "Kalith Vortanis and Ethan Cole of Earth stand before this council to argue for the recognition and protection of their bond under galactic law. Lord Veyrak Vortanis stands in opposition. Both sides will speak. The council will decide." Veyrak spoke first. He was a good speaker, Ethan had to admit. His voice was strong and full of conviction, and his words were chosen carefully to play on the fears of every species in the room. "The humans were a young and reckless species," he said. "They did not understand the traditions they had violated. The Kethvor was a dead ritual from a forgotten age, and to let it stand was to let a primitive species manipulate its way into power through a trick. If the council recognized this bond, they set a dangerous example. Any weak species could claim ties to a stronger one through deception. The balance of the galaxy would be destroyed." He spoke of order, of strength, of the importance of keeping things as they had always been. When he finished, many heads in the chamber were nodding. He had not spoken out of hatred. He had spoken out of fear, and fear was a language every species understood. Then Kalith stepped forward. She released Ethan's hand and walked to the center of the floor alone. She stood tall and straight, but there was something different about her now. She did not carry herself like a weapon. She carried herself like a person who had chosen to put the weapon down. "I have fought in 11 campaigns," she said. Her voice carried clearly through the silent chamber. "I earned my first battle mark when I was 14 years old. I have killed more enemies than I can count. I have never shown weakness. I have done everything my people asked of me, and I have done it perfectly." She paused. The chamber was absolutely still. "And I was empty," she said. "Every victory felt the same. Every battle mark was just another line on my skin. I was the perfect Draelith warrior, and I was completely alone. Because in the Dominion, strength means standing above everyone else, and when you stand above everyone, there is no one standing beside you." She looked at Veyrak. "My uncle speaks of tradition. He speaks of the old ways. But the old ways gave me a life where the only touch I knew was the touch of a blade. The old ways taught me that kindness was weakness, that compassion was a flaw, that caring about another being was something to be ashamed of. Her voice grew harder. The old ways are killing us. The Dominion has more warriors than any empire in the galaxy, and we cannot keep a single one of them from dying alone. She turned to face the full council. 5 days ago, a human man walked into a sacred arena with no weapons and no armor. He faced a trained warrior with 4 blades and did not raise a single fist. Instead, he held me. He looked past every defense I had and saw the person underneath, and he chose compassion when any sane being would have chosen violence. She let those words settle. I have never in my life experienced anything that required more courage than what he did. Caliph stepped back. It was Ethan's turn. He had never spoken to a room this large. He had never spoken to an audience that included beings from 100 different worlds. He was not a diplomat. He was not a politician. He was a medic from a small town on a small planet, and his shoulder ached and his legs were shaking from the fight in the corridors. He walked to the center of the floor and looked around at the faces watching him. Some were curious. Some were hostile. Some looked at him like he was a strange animal in a cage. He took a deep breath. I am not going to give a fancy speech, he said. I am not very good at those. A few beings in the audience made sounds that might have been laughter. My species has been around for about 300,000 years. That is nothing compared to most of you. In that time, we almost wiped ourselves out more times than I want to count. We fought wars over land, over religion, over resources, over things so small and stupid that even we cannot explain them anymore. We did terrible things to each other. We burned cities. We poisoned our own air. We built weapons that could crack our planet in half. And then, we built more of them. He paused. But we also did something else. Every time we fell, we got back up. Every time we destroyed something, we rebuilt it. And slowly, over thousands of years and millions of mistakes, we learned something. We learned that the hardest thing in the universe is not winning a fight. It is choosing not to start one. He looked around the chamber. I did not hug Caliph to win a duel. I did not do it as a trick or a strategy or a political move. I did it because she looked like someone who was in pain, and where I come from, when you see someone in pain, you help them. You do not calculate whether it benefits you. You do not check what species they belong to. You do not ask if they deserve it. That is the one thing my species figured out that I think might be worth sharing with the galaxy. He straightened up, and despite the bruises and the blood and the aching in every part of his body, his voice was clear and firm. You can argue about whether we deserve a seat at your table. You can argue about whether we are strong enough, or old enough, or important enough. But I will tell you this. Humanity will always choose the hand over the fist. We will always choose to reach for someone instead of reaching for a weapon. And if that makes us weak in your eyes, then I think your definition of strength needs some work. He stepped back. The chamber was silent for a long, heavy moment. Then, from somewhere in the upper tiers, a sound began. It was a slow, rhythmic tapping. One of the tall, tree-like aliens was striking its branch-like arm against its seat in a gesture that Ethan did not recognize. Then another joined. Then another. Then, a group of small, furry beings on the opposite side began a low humming sound. Then the three-eyed aliens who had guarded the chamber doors began clicking their jaws together in unison. Every species had a different way of showing approval. Within a minute, the entire chamber was filled with a symphony of tapping and humming and clicking and stamping that shook the crystal dome above. The council speaker raised his heavy hand. Silence returned. The council will vote, the speaker said. The vote was not close. 114 species voted in favor. 23 voted against. 11 abstained. The bond between Caliph Vortanis and Ethan Cole was recognized and protected under galactic law. Veyroc's face twisted with rage. He stepped forward, his hand reaching for his blade. "This is a farce. I will not allow." He stopped. His own officers had moved, not toward the council, but away from him. They stood with their arms at their sides and their eyes on the ground. Not one of them would meet his gaze. "My lord," one of them said quietly, "it is over." Veyroc looked at his soldiers. He looked at the council. He looked at Caliph, who stood tall and unafraid, with a human man beside her. For a moment, it seemed like he might do something violent and desperate. Then the fight went out of him. His shoulders dropped. He turned and walked out of the chamber without another word. In the aftermath, things moved quickly. Humanity was granted a provisional seat on the Galactic Accord Council, not because of military power or economic strength, but because a single human had shown the galaxy something it had forgotten it needed. The Drelith Dominion did not change overnight. Empires never do. But cracks appeared in the old ways, and through those cracks, something new began to grow. Caliph remained the heir to the Dominion. Her standing among her people was stronger than ever, because the galaxy had seen her fight through a corridor of enemies and stand before the council without flinching. She was still a warrior. She would always be a warrior. But now she was something else too. Something she did not have a Drelith word for. Ethan told her the human word was partner. 3 weeks later, on a quiet evening, Ethan and Caliph stood at a wide viewport on the observation deck of the Grand Concord Station. The stars stretched out before them, countless and endless, the light of a galaxy that was just a little bit different than it had been a month ago. Caliph had all 4 of her arms crossed. It was a habit she had when she was thinking. Ethan leaned against the glass beside her, relaxed, his hands in his pockets. "Your species is insane," she said. "Probably," he agreed. "You walked into a duel with a warrior princess armed with plasma blades, and you hugged her." "I did, and now we are betrothed. It looks that way." She was quiet for a long moment, the stars reflected in her amber eyes. Then, slowly, 2 of her arms unfolded. They reached out, hesitant and unsure, and pulled him closer. "Do it again," she said. He wrapped his arms around her. She was warm, warmer than he expected, and after a moment, her other 2 arms came up and wrapped around him too. 4 arms and 2, an alien princess and a human soldier, standing together at the edge of the stars. He held her, and she held him, and the galaxy kept turning. Somewhere far away, on a small blue planet called Earth, the sun was rising.